Hello and good evening. Welcome to this first get-together since we've started on the journey of rediscovering, reimagining, pulse listening. I only touched on it briefly last month, but the reason I'm calling it reimagining pulse listening is because I really strongly feel that the real wonders of what pulses can tell you and how you can work with them as an artist are kind of covered over by all kinds of ideas about what pulses are and what they require from the practitioner, what pulse listening in Jin Shin Jyutsu is, in case you're happening across this video without having much of a background in Jin Shin Jyutsu. So pulse listening in Jin Shin Jyutsu is an art. Jin Shin Jyutsu is skillful creation, as Mary Burmeister said when she explained what she meant by the word art. But when it comes to pulse listening, notwithstanding the understanding that Jin Shin Jyutsu is skillful creation, that it works with worlds within worlds within worlds, that it works with levels and levels of understanding that build upon one another and are contained within one another, when it comes to pulse listening, very often there is this sense that, oh, well, now it all comes down to the wire, and now we're supposed to know things and find things out and pinpoint things and diagnose. And that creates a mental state and a mental composure that's just not useful for what pulse listening, when you apply Jin Shin Jyutsu as an art, can be and can deliver. And that is be a joyous vessel for listening, which in itself creates, opens, and holds the space for change. Listening itself, and you know this from your life experience, you simply recall those times when, as a child maybe, but also as an adult, it is sometimes a more marking experience when we are children, because the world expects us to have a difficult time at times to put into words what we need and want and are thinking and feeling. And at those times particularly, to have somebody there who's really listening rather than somebody who thinks they kind of guess what we're getting at and is always completing our sentences for us, the fact that somebody will take themselves back, lean back, stabilize in their own inner space and listen to us in such a way that all of a sudden the pressure is off. And the little child we then were doesn't feel like it's under any pressure to find its words, and then the words just come rolling out. Those are sometimes those funny childlike expressions that are quoted back to you years later by some loving grandmother or uncle or aunt or person. And that sense that you can relax back into just letting the words roll out, you feel heard, so then the words can roll out of you. What you feel can sort of, and feeling and sensing is 13 level in Jin Shin Jyutsu, can sort of cascade down to the 14 level, the mind, the words, the imagery, and then the words just come out, rather than being stuck here and thinking and figuring you need to produce. So what does this have to do with pulse listening? Well, when you remember what it feels like when the words just roll out. And if at times you have been such a listener, you also know quite keenly what it feels like to connect to that little kid who's talking to you. And as you are not trying to desperately make sense of what they're saying, but listening to what they're saying, something falls into place and a real deep sense of connection happens, right? So I'm inviting us all to reimagine that pulse listening could be that because it is. When you apply Jitsu as an art, it is that ability to take yourself back, yourself as a practitioner, as a listener, as a Jitsu qualified practitioner who's actually charging money for this. So now I should know from the pulses and tell them and impress them with just how much I find out about them. You can leave all that aside, as being pushed to the front of needing to deliver and perform. Take yourself back to that listening space. Then the life energy of the person, the pulse of the person, the safety energy lock of the person can come to the front with its own babble, so to speak. It can come with its melody, it can come with something that will always already be valuable and already always be a building block of change when you can't make sense of it. Undoubtedly, like that child who feels seen, heard, perceived, listened to, whether or not you can make sense of what they're saying simply because you are taking in that space. The same happens with safety energy locks. The same happens with pulses that we listen to. So the first and most traceable and trackable effect for you in the beginning is possibly not the response in the other person's body, although that will soon come. It will soon come that you realize, wow, something shifted really quickly this session. I wonder how that happened. But first, the more trackable effect is that for once you're not stressed about the pulse listening. For once you're not breaking out in a cold sweat trying to get past the pulse listening and into the doing because that's where you feel comfortable. Or if that hasn't been your experience, as you take yourself back, you're not here with your attention in the conventional sense. Attention, pay attention, be attentive. Everything hardens, your senses move to an alarmed state. Look, we immediately scan for danger. Listen to the pulses, we immediately scan for danger, for what's wrong. And when we take ourselves back, we find ourselves not caring so much about what it is we hear and enjoying the fact that we are hearing something. And yes, the making sense of what it is that we're hearing will still hold a seductive power for us. It will still be something we're interested in. That's okay, that'll come. But it'll come to the backdrop of somebody who is actually relaxed. And when your nervous system is not in the scanning for danger mode, but you are laid back, literally, energetically speaking, literally, leaning onto the back wall of your body, leaning inside the back of your chest, leaning against the space that's behind your shoulder blades, behind your tens especially. You're resting against the space that is behind you. You feel you don't have to pull this energy out of yourself, out of your own personal reserves. It's just you're connected to something that has your back and you're alive and listening, and that then has a repercussion on your client. You are enjoying the process. All right, so that's reimagining. That is, if you thought you knew pulse listening, and then you learn it again in the way that we'll be approaching it in this 5-month journey, you will have learned two very different things. You will have learned pulse listening twice, but once thinking it was one thing, and then finding out it's potentially, if you let it, something different altogether. And the first thing that we need in order to be such a listener is a strong and direct connection to our tools. And the connection to the tools, of course, are the hands. The connection to the tools that I'm speaking of is one where the mind doesn't jump on your fingers saying, what are they saying? What are they saying? What are they saying? Meaning the pulses. So your mind is not breathing down your fingers' neck saying, what are the pulses saying? What are they saying? What flow are we going to do? But rather I don't know, some deep, earthy, juicy aliveness and some spark, some interest, almost with a tinge of silliness in it, a sense of playfulness, most definitely, says, well, what are we going to discover? Like you're going to a marketplace in a foreign country. You're not even expecting to understand the language, but you're there to take in the scents and the colors and the sounds. And will you be able to make sense of things? Some things yes, some things no. Feels pretty foreign. But what a joy to be in the middle of this foreign marketplace and hear those sounds and smell those smells and take in those sights and not be alarmed. If you go to that marketplace in a foreign land and you say, are they here to rip me off? Do they sell any of the things that I'm familiar to? Well, that's pointless then to go to. It's better than to just stay home, But the joy you can have of going to an unknown place and saying, I don't know, what about this will make sense? What about this will catch my fancy? What about this will appeal to me, and what will remain foreign? But to be here, to take it in, to be a respectful and honoring discoverer of this will feel good to you and of course be noticed by your surroundings. Again, pulse listening is that. Pulse listening in this way, of course in Western medicine it's different. You want to find out the rhythm of a person's heartbeat. And that just isn't what we do. It plays almost no role, but in Jin-Shin-Jyutsu we just don't count the pulse rate of a person. This is simply not what we do. Of course that can be done, of course that has value, but not in the context of Jin-Shin-Jyutsu or other methods from Asia that use pulse listening quite differently. Ayurvedic medicine uses pulse listening also with 3 fingers on each hand, but interprets them quite differently. Tibetan medicine, 3 fingers on each hand, interprets them quite differently. Traditional Chinese medicine uses a slightly different position than Jin-Shin-Jyutsu does, and Jin-Shin-Jyutsu has its position and so on. So different approaches, but all of them want to take in a landscape. So the kind of connection that we are here to practice today is one that you may also find echoes of, at least. If you go to a book by Chogyam Trungpa, the Tibetan Lama who used to live in Boulder, Colorado, he's long passed away in the 80s, but there's a book of his that's out called True Perception. And if you go to the chapter combining heaven and earth, or connecting heaven and earth, or joining heaven and earth, I can't remember, it's the last chapter in the book, the heaven and earth chapter, it's a long chapter. It speaks about an artist's connection to their tool. And of course he's, addressing people who are studying fine arts at a liberal arts college, Naropa Institute, that he founded. But so much of what he says there is a direct instruction manual for Jin-Shin-Jyutsu if you want to practice it as an art. And one of the things he talks about is how important it is to get a sense of the temperature of the room. And the heat of neurosis, that's the term he uses in the English version. Yes, the heat of neurosis. The heat of neurosis is so important for us to have a perception of when it arises, so that we can let that fall away. And so the heat of neurosis, you may think, well, what the heck is that? Well, when you are going, am I doing it right? Am I feeling the right thing? Am I feeling what I'm supposed to feel? That whole thing, that stress, is what Trungpa calls the heat of neurosis. I find it very, very easy to understand and relate to that term, the heat of neurosis, because it feels like your head starts overheating your mind, right? So sit there and feel your hands placed palms down on your thighs, knees, wherever they comfortably and naturally rest, but palms down, it's important. The whole palms up thing, many meditation postures use that. That's different. It aims at something different. Here, I'm aiming at landing fully in my hands. So feel the skin surface. Feel your hand, the whole wide expanse of it. Touching the knee or thigh. Of course, you feel the fabric of your trousers or whatever you're wearing. You probably feel the fabric right under your palms and fingers. But through that fabric, you can clearly feel the aliveness of the thigh, the knee, the body that you are touching, and you can feel your hand ending at its skin surface. Of course, its aliveness spreads beyond. But if you direct your awareness to it, you can clearly feel the border, the soft, warm, sensitive, lively border that the skin on your hands provides for you to know I'm here. And there's the body I'm touching. Here I am, there you are. Is a dimension of touch that I talk about all the time in the context of practicing Jinshin Jitsu, because I think it is primordial to creating trust in a client. When their body is touched this way, they know you're not invading their space. They know you know about them. They know you're holding space for them. They know you are doing so by holding your own space. You, at the end of the session, then feel like you haven't left your space, or at least not much. And if you have at all, you can easily return to the integrity of your space. It's so that your client's story doesn't travel with you. And after a moment or some moments of being with, here I am, and there you are, thigh. Center your sensory awareness on the curiosity that you also feel in your hands. There may be a tingling. Tingling throughout your hands or at your fingertips. There may be an increased sense of aliveness throughout your body. You may even feel like it's easier to sit up. And that's simply because anytime you awaken this sensory curiosity, you're activating the dimension that we call 13, not the safety energy lock alone, but the level of energy that it represents. Your appetite for life, your appetite for discovery, your desire to travel and discover and reach out. And as soon as that gets activated in your being, you perk up. It's also why 13 is called the fountain of youth, because whenever curiosity for life and others and the way things are awakens in a being, then something truly alive and youthfully alive, or agelessly alive and therefore youthful, shines up in them, just sparkles. And your hands can be full of curiosity, and yet, as they are placed on your thighs doing nothing, be without even a trace of impatience. Open, receptive, curious, ready, and patient. Now, as your hands rest and your sensory awareness rests on the curiosity that you can feel there, I would like to invite you to feel that curiosity, the traces and anchors of that curiosity into your body. So your hands have it, your hands feel it, they're very activated while still feeling their limit, their contour, their surface, their skin. They're full of receptive curiosity, full of eager interest, full of an appetite for discovery. Can you feel where this eagerness to discover something can also be felt in your body, where it connects back to from your hands? No concepts, please. Just let your body, your bodily experience surprise you. that eagerness and curiosity takes root all the way back into your arms, maybe your shoulders, maybe as far down as your belly. Maybe it doesn't have as specific a location, and you can feel little resonances of that curiosity everywhere, or in many a place in your body at least. Of course, it could be in your chest, where number 13 lives, but it absolutely doesn't have to be. When you have a juicy sense of that curiosity having other anchors in other areas of your body, I'm inviting you to gently come out of this meditation while maintaining as much of that sensation of sensory curiosity in your hands, and taking that to things that you touch, things that are there, and just feel, just experience for this month, and if you want for the rest of your jumper cable days, just experience what it is like to touch with hands that are fully present. And, you know, the mind says, oh, velvet, I love touching velvet. Don't we all just love velvet? But hands just touch. Hands just take in, just experience that way of sensing that doesn't seek to label anything. And at the same time, while it's not labeling anything, is holding space for what is to be as it is, and observe the resonance that that has with you again. Everything I've said since the beginning of this evening's gathering, leaning onto the space, you know, just resting against the space that's behind you, taking yourself back, having nowhere to go, nothing to decide, nothing to find out. Just be here, but be actively engaged with the world by perceiving it and staying in perception. May take a while for more people to catch on to just what this journey of rediscovering pulse listening might hold for them. But because, especially if you have a background in Jin Jitsu and have studied pulse listening, maybe attended pulse listening courses or pulse reading and body reading weekends or something, you may think, I have the information all in my notes. It's just, but this really is something that's healing to, well, it is something, as I've described, that can change your whole practice of Jin Shin Jitsu, from being more of a technique that you do right, or where you think it's about doing it right and figuring out what needs to be done next, which flow needs to be applied, to shifting that to applying it as an art, where you resonate with certain things, flows that you could do, and therefore apply them from an inner understanding of who they are. But the whole notion that what the world needs more than good advice is a listening and a listener, and collectives, listening collectives that take themselves back. I really don't think that notion gets old. I really don't think we are anywhere close to having an overdose of that in this world, to put it in the understatement of the century. I think this is what is greatly needed in this time, more than ever, perhaps. So, of course, at the end of this gathering this evening, as always, there will be the chart that takes you right to my website and the different websites of my online offerings, and there you'll be able to check out the different options of either joining the online study circle if you're interested in following this journey, or just purchasing lifetime access to that 5-month journey if that's what you prefer. And with that, I'm going to get into this evening's questions. Taj sends her appreciation and questions. Hello, Matthias. Thank you for putting out a 5-month proposed course structure for pulse listening. I do appreciate having a big picture to put pieces into. I'm especially enjoying the foundational essence of this first month. It reminds me of the quality of spring before the spring, like you spoke about when presenting third depth gallbladder function energy in February. It's always such fun for me to hear these quotes from things I've recorded, because I don't remember them. Spring before the spring. Yeah, gallbladder function energy, which is represented by the Aquarian aspect of each of us human beings, is such clarity. It brings such clarity that on one hand, of course, it could be symbolized through the cool of winter in that often coolest month of the year in the northern hemisphere, at least, only. But because it's so clear in its view, and so the harbinger of new life and new insights and things to come and the clear and crystalline future, etc., it has that dimension of spring before the spring. I took your invitation literally, Taj continues to write, to check in the heart, belly and fingertips for my felt sense relationship to pulse listening. Phew. Much more angst there than I would have guessed, right? Because, now this is in the first teaching video, which any of you can go check out on this e-learning.matthiasjsj.de that you'll have a link to at the end of this livecast. On that website, you'll find a landing page that allows you to watch the first teaching video of this course. So that is where I say, how does it feel here? How does it feel here? How does it feel here? That's what Taj took literally, and found out that there's much more angst there than she expected. And I have just simply found that to be the case for so many people whom I've trained over the decades, you know, people in 5-day classes, people after many, many 5-day classes still saying, the pulses are, I don't know. And even the people who do routinely listen to pulses, that angst is not necessary, it stands in the way. However, good to clear that out, she continues, making way for your simple yet profound I can do this sense-opening exercises has made this month light and playful, experience-based education, the best. Yeah, light and playful. That's my promise from this approach to pulse listening. There is positively no reason, if you commit to the exercises in this 5-month journey, there just is no reason why pulse listening from here on out should ever be anything but light and playful. There just is no good reason for that. There's nothing that can stand between you and having it be light and playful, you, anyone listening. And yeah, the tools you may need to realize that that is so, and that is accessible to you, are available. So, experience-based. 2 questions. Actually, there's a third one coming, but you'll hear that in time. 2 questions. I am curious if there are a finite number of general touch qualities Similar to the classification of taste into 6 major groups: sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, astringent, plus arugula. Ha ha. Yeah, well, yes, and maybe not, but yes, there are 6 distinct pulsation qualities that Mary calls textures. They are the topic of next month. That's when we will discover the textures that Mary describes as fluffy or evaporation, pulse or plasma, gummy or solidifying, rocks and rods or solid, gurgles or liquefying, and then silk or liquid fluid pulse quality. So yeah, those are the 6, and that's why I said yes, there is a finite number, and maybe not, I added, because there are transitions between these different textures. And one of the things that we will be making available over the course of this course is the illustration that Madeleine Phan created for not only, well, the illustrations she created, or the 2 of us had a conversation that made that happen. So I was showing Madeleine, no, this is what I mean. I was showing her at the fingertips, and then all of a sudden I thought, she's not looking at me, is she distracted? And then the next thing I know is, because she was looking down, next thing I know is she's holding up a sheet of paper saying, you mean sort of like this? It's just a wonderful experience. So she illustrated that, and then she made an illustration where, because she asked me, do you want the order of transformation in the book? And I said, well, the only way that would make sense is if we could somehow illustrate how a fluffy pulse little by little becomes a pulsy pulse, which little by little becomes a gummy pulse, which little by little becomes a roxy rodsy pulse. Bear with me for a second, I'll be right back. Oops. Went to the wrong drawer. Thank you for hanging in there. I didn't think of this before our gathering this evening, that I would talk about and might want to show you those things. So finite number, here are those 6 textures, and here is the illustration that shows the transition that I talked about. So this, what you are seeing on your screen now, is the German version of the book. The illustration, of course, is neither German nor any language, and that is material that we will be making available. Book 2 on the depths, called Weaving, is not going to be available in English in the next couple of months or anything like that, because it's a very expensive printing, and we are very, very far from the kind of demand that it would require to have that book printed, but it'll happen one day. So, finite number of pulses, yes, in the sense that we do speak about 6 textures that you will learn to be able to distinguish clearly. It will be much more than just words. You will learn to know with clarity when you are feeling one of them, because it'll be at your fingertips. It's not in your mind, it's at your fingertips. And we will go into how to know that next month. And then, because there's always a transition between them, it slides from one to the next. So in that sense, it's like the colors of the rainbow, you know? Is there a finite number? Well, yeah, our mind can make sense of the fact that we say, well, yeah, sure, anyone can see it. It goes from violet through blue to green to yellow to orange to red. We can all see it. And if we have a closer look, it transitions in an infinite number of colors through different tones of red into different tones of orange, which turn into different shades of yellow and a multitude of shades of green and a multitude of shades of blue and a multitude of shades of violet. And some people then speak of indigo. So there's ultraviolet, there's infrared, which we can't see, but within the spectrum that we can see, it makes sense to distinguish. Our mind is set up in a way that we distinguish between yellow, orange, red. Okay, start at the other end of the spectrum. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. That's 6 colors. And there's an infinite number of colors. So we see a finite number. There is an infinite number of different wavelengths that translate as colors. We do distinguish and clearly distinguish 6 textures, and there is a continuous transitioning and sliding between them. So both a finite and an infinite number. Isn't it lovely? Like with tastes, right? Also, in the first lesson, you used the phrase listening into the safety energy lock. What it wants to do in terms of changing, opening, melting. As if, of course, that's the way we hold safety energy locks. I really laughed hard when I read this, Taj. Would you say something more about interacting with safety energy locks with that level of skill? I laughed hard because when I read, as if, of course, that's the way we hold safety energy locks. Because literally for a moment I thought, well, don't we? I mean, so you touch a safety energy lock, and if all you're interested in and if all you're able to pick up is, oh, that guy is really tense, push, well, then there isn't much of a conversation happening there, is there? But if you can feel, this is, I don't know. If you touch an energy lock with a firmness that mirrors what you find there, you touch the safety energy lock with the same firmness as the tissue that you are touching, but slightly less, yes, slightly less, no pressure, just slightly less than that. And then you feel the tissue responding to that as it feels mirrored and heard, and then say firm tissue melts, well, your fingers melt along and go into the safety energy lock a little more deeply. Or let's say something that was soft firms up a bit, then your touch would firm up too, but in whatever direction the transformation goes, you'd always see to it that you're not exceeding the kind of intensity that you're feeling in the tissue, right? You're always letting the tissue of the energy lock guide you, guide the work you do, guide the way you touch. That, at least, is my way of working with it, and in my experience, it makes for a different kind of work. You know, you can be on the very same safety energy locks and push into them, press into them, and impress the person who you are treating in such a way. And for some clients and practitioners, that seems to work. You know, the practitioner then is the person who knows something, and the client is the person who needs somebody who knows something. That's fine, and that's okay. To me, my understanding of the art of universal aliveness through a compassionate and sensitive human being is different. It's that the intelligence of the safety energy lock will communicate with the intelligence of universal aliveness, the thing we call jumper cable energy or seventh depth energy in Shinjitsu. So again, universal aliveness, having a chat with individualized universal principles called safety energy locks. Now the space within which that conversation, so I'm not jumper cable energy, right? The space, though, the meeting room, that universal aliveness and the aliveness of an energy lock are having, the space for that conversation is the space of my listening, right? So my role as a practitioner is to hold that space of listening, to hold space for them. Sometimes we almost feel like we're absent as practitioners. That's fine too. Then that's a different kind of holding space. We're holding space where they can converse. The more I want, the less can happen. The more I want, the more I close that space, invade that space almost. And then that intelligent conversation that is completely sufficient isn't happening. So you understand, as practitioners, we have that responsibility of holding the space, not of delivering the energy, not of delivering the wisdom, but of holding the space where the aliveness and the wisdom can have a conversation. They can have it because someone is holding the space for that to happen. I love it. I just love it. I just love Shinjitsu. To me, that is what Shinjitsu is. So I hope that was helpful. I mean, I hope that gave you a hint to start working in that direction with. And a third question. The I word, intention. In the chapter on first depth from your foundational course 1, that's year 1 of the online study circle that Taj is talking about. In chapter 1 on first depth from your foundational course 1, you suggested hold the thumb while also intending a quality of landing. I am most surprised to hear that quote. I would swear that that's not language I use, but anyway, I trust you, and I've already said, once I say the things I say, I forget them. I have not had the time to go back and watch that chapter and make sure I'm really saying intending and not listening out for, or while also attending to, or I don't know, I guess I say intending. Everyone who's listening, you may be wondering why is it such a big deal? Well, listen to this. In the kidney section of the organ function energy course, you refer to holding the intention of why I'm jumper cabling a specific safety energy lock. Again, I couldn't believe that I say that, but I do trust your hearing, especially since Taj then continues. I'm delighted to hear you use the I word, intention, since I got chided when I referred to it in a question last August. What I meant to say back then is that while safety energy lock 19 is safety energy lock 19 is safety energy lock 19, for me to have a different felt sense quality when I'm holding them with reference to a spleen quickie, a small intestine quickie, or a diaphragm quickie. How would you articulate your clarity about the appropriate and grounded use of the term intention? As always, with much appreciation and gratitude, Taj. Well, first of all, Taj, I want to apologize if you felt chided when I responded last August. And I want to acknowledge that I do go to a place when the I word is brought up, when intention is brought up, that how can I put this? How do I want to put this? I go to a place there's something there. I can see myself speaking with an energy that may make you, as a person who dared ask that question, feel chided. I apologize for that because it's not my intention. It's not what I want to do. And yet I acknowledge that there's a sharpness that comes up, and that has to do with, so what is the grounded and appropriate use of intention? I just used the word intention and used it quite deliberately. What concerns me is that, especially in the world of subtle methods, yes, energetic methods, faith healing, spirit healing, good intentions, just appear everywhere. And there is this misconception that it doesn't really matter so much what you do as long as the intention is good. And we all do intend things. We have an intention, and what I find very, very important for our work here as we apply Jin Shin Jitsu as an art is to have some sense of where our attention is going. That's ATTENTION. Our attention is going, and perhaps where our orientation is. Where's my curiosity directed? Which is very different from this is what I want to achieve. I hope I've chosen the right path in order to achieve that. That's how I understand intention most of the time. So, what exactly was I talking about when I said, presuming that I did say that, intending a quality of landing? I really don't know. I really do find it useful to give up the notion of a certain place we want to get to and the notion of a certain result we want to obtain when we apply Jin Shin Jitsu. An orientation towards something also, it's been a while since I recorded that year one and a bit on first depth, but the orientation towards, can I feel earth? Can I feel landing? Can I feel ground under my feet? Can I feel something that my weight rests on? That kind of orientation. What's the flavor? You know, as long as we stay curious. All right, so a word I didn't look up in the dictionary I had intended to. See, intend. I plan for something. We do this all the time. You know, I intend to call a person, and then I do or I don't. But the context, we're talking about it in a very specific context. I'm saying when you apply a Jin Shin Jitsu session, it is good to leave intention aside as much as possible so that you not get attached to a certain specific outcome. Sorry, I got off on that track because I used the word intend. Right. The thing that I keep getting stuck on, I have to say it, I was hoping I'd find a way to not get into that, because this is where people end up feeling chided again. The reason I find it extremely important to be cautious around the word intention is because there isn't a horrific outcome in the world, not one, that is not the result of very strongly focused intention. I think I probably said this in August too, because it's a pretty regular statement I make. And so often, you know, people, I don't think I've ever met a person who held a strong intention who didn't also think that the intention they held was good. You know, what's wrong with wanting everybody to know the one and only true God and that sort of thing. But truly, I mean, you know, terrible mishaps can happen unintentionally, accidents, but the real horrific things that build great things that then create great pressure and suppression and oppression, etc., that always is the fruit of intention. And a lot of good happens without a need for that intention, an orientation, a listening towards the harmony that draws me. Yes, and if that is what you mean by intention, no, I know where I got off track. If that is what you mean by intention, then that would be what I call, to use your words, the appropriate and grounded use of intention, if that is what you mean by intention. What I was going to look up was the exact English range of translations for the German word Begriff. Begriff means a term or the meaning of a word. Begriff, so intention is a word, right? And what you mean when you say intention matters greatly, because otherwise, you know, I could be hammering away at the word because of what I hear when that word is used, and you may just, you know, maybe you just got it. Maybe you just thought, well, that's what's intention to me. It's an orientation, a curiosity in the direction of a gentle but detached desire that, if possible, this may arrive, you know, harmony, for example, etc. Yeah, and in order to stay responsible with the use of intention, I think it is useful and perhaps sufficient to ask ourselves, is there any part of my intention that falls short of letting the other, the world, the other person, free to run their course? Yeah? Or have I crossed the border where my intention wants something for the other person, or wants a specific outcome, whether that organically comes to pass or not? Is there any interference that comes from my intention? Yeah? And if there is, then the legitimacy of that interference needs to be questioned. You know? Because we all do interfere in certain contexts. Well, that's what politics or engagement in a community, for example, is all about. It's, I am part of this community. I do intervene. I do interfere. I do wish to see things go a certain way. In the context of Jin Shin Jyutsu, Mary said, the less I want, the more can happen. In the context of Jin Shin Jyutsu, Mary said, the less I try, the more I can feel. Or maybe it was the other way around. The less I want, the more I can feel. The less I try, the more can happen. No, the less I try, the more I can feel. The less I want, the more can happen. That's the content. So, the context, excuse me. So, in my world, the most appropriate use of intention is for intention to be something that talks about me, and attention something that talks about the result. That I may intend to become a better listener, right? I may intend to, many of the things that I alluded to earlier. So keep the intentions as something that regards me, and leave the outcomes free of the burden of intention, at least as far as Jin Shin Jyutsu is concerned. Or any process that involves listening, creating a work of art, for example. I think if the intention is that this must be memorable and must be for the ages, it's hard. So I intend to be fully present and allow the process to tell me which work of art is wanting to be created. That, I think, in any art form would also be what's required of the artist. So I hope that was able to clear up some of the linguistic hang-up around the word intention. And with that, I thank you very much. Thank you, Taj, for submitting again this evening's questions. Anyone else who wants to hear their questions answered next month or one of the months to come, do mail them to me at least 2 hours before we get together, and I'll see you next month. And in the meantime, check into all the good stuff that's on offer at these websites. Have a lovely evening, everyone.